Welcome. This is beautiful thrift homemaking, and our first project is that we are reading through a cookbook from 1917. So it's actually also a vintage instructional novel about homemaking, and this is the cover of the reprint that I have from Dover Publications, and we are on chapter 17. So if you missed the first chapters, then you might want to go back and get to know this young couple, Bettina and Bob, who are newlyweds, and see what's up with them. So today's chapter 17 is called Bob Gets Breakfast on Sunday. Now, Bettina, you sit here and direct me, but don't you dare to move. I'm going to get breakfast myself. Fine for you, chef. Have it on the porch, will you? It's the most beautiful morning of the year, I do believe. But you must give me something to do. Let me set the table, will you? Well, you can do that, but get me an apron first. Be sure you get one that'll be becoming. Bettina went to a deep drawer in the pantry, of which the breakfast alcove was a part, and selected a white bungalow apron with red dots. Here, put your arms through this. There, how chic you look. Bob, do you realize that this is our first breakfast on the porch? I must get some of those feathery things growing out there. I want them for the table. We must celebrate. If having flowers on the table is celebrating, you celebrate every day. Of course, my dear. Our married life is just one long celebration. Haven't you discovered that yet? Bettina had thus far no flower garden, but she was never without flowers. The weeds and grasses in her backyard had a way of turning themselves into charming centerpieces, and then too, red clover was always plentiful. Bob moved the coffee percolator and the electric toaster to the porch and attached them while Bettina spread the luncheon cloth upon the small table. Aren't you glad we thought to plan it so that we might have the percolator and the toaster out here? She said. That was your idea, wasn't it? Aren't you glad you married me? Said Bob enthusiastically. I'll bet I'm the only man on this street who can frizzle dried beef and cream it, and make coffee. Who taught you that, I'd like to know? Give some credit to your wife who forces you to do it. Here, Bridget, the grapefruit is in the icebox. Did you see it? And the oatmeal in the cooker is waiting to be reheated. Set it in a kettle of water over the fire so that it won't burn. There are rolls in the bread box. Put them in the oven a minute to warm up. If they seem dry, dip them quickly in water before heating them. Now, shall I be making some toast rounds for the chipped beef? Well, you might be doing that. I'm getting dizzy with all these orders, ma'am. You can hunt up the cream and the milk and the butter too, if you will. Now for the beef. Say, but this is going to be a good breakfast. Before the war, I used to sleep late on Sundays, but not anymore for me. I like to cook. That's someone at the door. I'll go. You're busier than I am. There on the doorstep beside the Sunday paper stood a little 4-year-old neighbor, her hands full of old-fashioned pinks. My mother sent these to you, she said. Oh, lovely, dear. Thank you. Won't you come in? No, my daddy has to shine my shoes for Sunday school. Bob, aren't these pretty with the white feathery weeds? I do love flowers. They don't look half so pretty as this air frizzled beef does. Breakfast is all ready. Bettina sat down to an open-air breakfast of grapefruit, oatmeal and cream, creamed beef, toast rounds, rolls, butter, and coffee. And there's a little bit more of the story after the menu is given. After a jolly and leisurely meal, Bob announced that he was ready to wash the dishes. Ever since I've seen that nice white-lined dishpan of yours, I've wanted to try it. It's oval, and I never saw an oval one before. I like it because it fits into the sink so well and fills all the space it can. See how efficient I am. I put on the water for the dishes when we sat down to eat. Now I'll have nice hot soapy water and lots of it to rinse them. But don't rinse the glasses, dear. See how I can polish glass and silver that has just come out of that clean soapy water? Look, isn't that shiny and pretty? There, you can scald everything else. There's the telephone. It's it's Mrs. Dixon. What on earth can she want? She asked for you. Bettina talked for a few moments in monosyllables and then returned to the dishes. What did she have to say? Bob asked. She asked me not to tell you, Bob. Nothing much. Perhaps you'll know someday. Bob looked puzzled and slightly hurt. It was the first time that Bettina had kept anything from him, and he could not help showing some displeasure. Bettina saw this and said, Bob, I don't want to have any secret from you, and I'd like you to know that this is nothing that I wouldn't tell you gladly if I were the only one concerned. I promised, that's all. You'll smile when you know all about it. And Bob was mollified. And now we have Bettina's recipes, and it says all measurements are level. We have oatmeal, and we have creamed beef. All right. And then chapter 18, Bettina gives a porch party. I'm so glad that you girls have come, for I've been longing to show you the porch ever since Bob and I put on the finishing touches. Oh, Bettina, it's lovely, cried all the guests in a chorus. But weren't you awfully extravagant? Wait till I tell you. Perhaps I ought not to give myself away, but I am prouder of our little economies than of anything else. We've had such fun over them. This is some old wicker furniture that Mother had in her attic, all but this chair that came from Aunt Nell's. Bob mended it very carefully and then enameled it in this dull green color. I have been busy with these cretonne hangings and cushions for a long time, and we have been coaxing along the flowers in our hanging baskets and our window boxes for days and days so that they would make a good impression on our first porch guests. Bob made the flower boxes himself and enameled them to go with the furniture. This high wicker flower box was a wedding gift, and so was the wicker reading lamp. This matting rug is new, but I must admit that we bought nothing else except this drop leaf table, which I have been wanting for a long time. You see, it will make a good serving table, and then we expect to eat on it in warm weather. What are we to make today, Bettina? The invitation has made us all curious. The porch is cool as cool can be, so come on Thursday just at 3 to stay a while and sew on something useful, strong, and neat, which, with your help, will quite complete Bettina's bungalow. What about the little sketches of knives and forks and spoons in the corners? Bob did that. He wrote the verse too, or I'm afraid I should have telephoned. Are we all here? Wait a minute. And Bettina wheeled out her tea cart, on which, among trailing nasturtiums, were mysterious packages wrapped in fringed green tissue paper. What's in them? Silver cases cut and ready to be made. Oh, how cunning! Shall we label them too? What is the card? I'll not encase your silver speech, for this is quite beyond my reach. Did Bob do that too? The impudence! And Ruth threaded her needle in preparation. You see, said Bettina, I hadn't found time to make cases for my silver, so I just decided to let you girls help me. The card tells what to label them in outline stitch in these bright colors. I used to open 10 cases at home before I found what I wanted, so I am insuring against that. Talk and laughter shortened the afternoon, but at 5 o'clock, Bettina wheeled out her tea cart again. The dainty luncheon was decorated with nasturtiums. The girls laid aside their work while Bettina served sunbonnet baby salad, nut bread sandwiches, iced tea, mint wafers, lemon sherbet, and tea cakes. And so the recipes are for the sunbonnet baby salad, the nut bread, which, by the way, has a sea sugar in it. And sea sugar is said to be light brown sugar and that gives food a delicious flavor. The lemon sherbet, icing, and then Bettina's suggestions at the bottom here are to arrange the sunbonnet babies on a salad platter and let the guests help themselves. The salad is light and attractive. The stem end of the pear represents the neck. Cream the butter to be used for sandwiches. It spreads more evenly and goes farther. Sandwiches taste better if allowed to stand for several hours. Wrap securely in a napkin which has been well dampened, not wet. Cut the slices very thin and press together firmly. Cut into fancy shapes. All right, so that's the end of chapter 18, and stay with me and we'll dive into our discussion. Thank you. Okay, here we're going to discuss chapters 17 and 18 from 1,000 Ways to Please a Husband, a 1917 cookbook. So we have chapter 17, Bob prepares breakfast, and so he's helping out and he's making creamed beef, which is kind of like gravy on toast. Whereas I know we're familiar with something like biscuits and gravy. So this would be his contribution to the meal, and they're also going to have a grapefruit and some oatmeal. I noticed that the oatmeal recipe asked for the oatmeal to be cooked for an hour, so that was interesting. We have such the quick oats now, don't we? And even quicker oats. And so she asked that the oatmeal be reheated over a double boiler situation, which is a really good idea if you do have extra oatmeal. If you have leftover oatmeal, you know that it's difficult to reheat it properly. So think about putting it over a double boiler. You know what that is? It's when there's a pan on the bottom that has a couple inches of water in it, and you bring that to a boil. And on top of that, there's another pan that fits into it, and the bottom of it is just above that boiling water, or the simmering water, whatever is needed. And then you're able to heat the food without letting it get in direct contact with the fire or the burner, and then it is not going to stick and burn to the bottom of the pan. So that's a good idea. And then I liked her idea about warming the rolls with just to get a little bit of wetness, but not just dampness, right? Not wet, yeah. So that they're not don't stay dry. And then she serves coffee with cream. The neighbor girl brings flowers, a sweet little 4-year-old neighbor, bringing flowers that are called pinks. And Bettina, as you know, always likes to put a centerpiece on her table. She likes to decorate for everyone who sits at her table this way. And so this time she had gone out and got something feathery looking from the backyard, which they say they have not planted their garden or their flowers or their landscaping yet. So she goes out and gets some kind of a grass or a weed. And now she was able to add these pinks to those feathery things. And the little girl, she said that her dad was going to shine her shoes for Sunday school. Do you remember about shoe shining? People used to keep their good shoes shined up so that they would reflect the light and look very, very nice and clean. And they like that shine on the shoes. And she is going to go to Sunday school. So it must be a Sunday morning. In fact, the Sunday paper was on the porch. Bob was going to ask, he wanted an apron like Bettina wears when he was fixing the breakfast. So He got a full coverage apron like Bettina wears, so he had to put his arms through it because it's not just tied around his waist. It covers the top portion also. And they're going to eat out on the porch because Bettina said, "Can we please eat out on the porch? It's a beautiful day." She's always so positive and just excited, isn't she? I like that. She is going to consider this breakfast on the porch a celebration, and Bob's not surprised, but he says that if having flowers on the table is celebrating, then you celebrate every day. And she said, "Yes, I do, because I'm married to you and I'm celebrating my married life." So that's just a wonderful attitude that she has. Bob, he put the coffee percolator and the electric toaster on the porch to help with their breakfast preparations. And Bettina, she put a tablecloth on the table, and then the flowers. And then Mrs. Dixon called, and you might remember in another chapter that Bob and Bettina had gone on a picnic with Mr. and Mrs. Dixon, and that they're the ones that live in a hotel full-time. And Mr. Dixon works in the office with Bob. So Mrs. Dixon called on the telephone, and she had a little secret, something that she's dreaming up, and it's not time for Bob to know about it, nor is it time for Mr. Dixon to know about it. So we're gonna have to find out what they're up to, these two ladies. And so then we move on to chapter 18, which I like this line. Bettina said, "I'm prouder of our little economies than of anything else. We've had such fun over them." What a great attitude, huh? To have about budgeting and about finding ways to save money, to consider it fun. And she just took on that challenge with the greatest attitude. And what did she mean by our little economies? She was pointing out the porch furniture. She was pointing out the wicker that had come from her mom's attic. And if you've been with me since the beginning, you'll know that in chapter 1, she made a comment that she couldn't wait to get into her mom's attic and bring some things down and reuse them on her porch. And that is just what has happened. We see that that did happen, and that Bob had a part in it too, because he went to his aunt's and got a chair that needed some mending. He fixed up that chair and he painted it with a dull green color. And so I imagine that the white wicker and then this dull green chair look really fresh and inviting on this front porch. Remember, this is a craftsman bungalow, and so it has a really deep covered front porch. So they are on their front porch. Now we have Bettina inviting some friends over, and Bob, he likes rhyme. I think that's probably part of the era that they live in, is the enjoyment of rhyme and verse. You remember the advertising jingles, for example, were really popular back then. And so Bob, he has a way about enjoying creating these little jingles and these little verses and rhymes. And so he wrote out the invitations for Bettina to invite her friends over to sew with her. And she pointed out that she had been making some curtains and cushions for the porch, and that was out of an upholstery fabric. And then she was talking about the flower baskets and the window boxes, and Bob had, of course, fixed those up and painted them to match the furniture. And they even had a wicker reading lamp on the front porch. So you can see how much of a living space this is becoming for them. Now there's a rug and a drop leaf table, and her friends come over at 3 in the afternoon on a weekday. Well, I had a little technical difficulty there. I was at an Airbnb on a trip that I took up the Oregon coast, and I am back home now, and I'm going to finish talking to you about chapter 18. We had Bettina on the porch with her friends, and they were sewing. She set up a project for them to work on together. She wanted to make cloth silverware cases She calls her silverware her silver, and she's talking about the type of silverware that instead of being stainless steel like ours is today, for the most part, it is something that's either plated with silver or it is actually heavy sterling silver. Now, the kind that you can usually find around in antique stores and thrift stores generally is going to be silver plate because it's much less expensive. So if you find a piece that you think is beautiful and you'd like to incorporate it into your serving ware, I just wanted to show you that it does tarnish, and you might find pieces that look black, in fact, as this is a nice soup spoon. See how deep it is. And Bettina was having her friends label the cloth cases for each of the types of silverware. So for forks, there would be a case, and for regular spoons, maybe teaspoons and soup spoons would have their own cases. Perhaps the table knives and even butter knives. I've got a little butter knife here. And these are often so decorative. They have flowers and usually flowers on them. So if you do find any in a thrift store that are tarnished, because exposure to the air will, I just suggest you take a little bit of toothpaste on a soft rag. This is a piece of flannel and a little bit of toothpaste. I'm not selling anything on my channel. I don't intend to do that. That's not my purpose here. And I just want to show you how you can make your own little polish by using some toothpaste. And so I'm going to just put a little bit of elbow grease into this. You see, I'm just rubbing the toothpaste on the silver fork. And I'm only going to do this for a second to show you the difference that it can make in the coloring. All right, now, obviously I would need to rinse this, but you can see now the area that I've been rubbing with toothpaste is now getting to be a bright, shiny silver color instead of the blackened color. Yep. And there's a beautiful flower design here. I wonder if I can show that to you more. It's there. If I put a little toothpaste on it, if we can see it better. I didn't maybe get enough toothpaste. It doesn't matter what kind you use, it seems. But now you can kind of see the flower there, or the little design, kind of based on a floral abstract. Okay, so yeah, the reason I have these, I got them at thrift stores or, you know, antique shops, is because they make lovely wind chimes. They can be hung, and when they cling together, they make a lovely sound. Not necessarily when you're holding them, but when they're hanging freely. And then other pieces are fun to just add to your table. Maybe if you're serving dessert or having a tea party, you would have maybe a special spoon for the sugar. So you might consider something like that. If you think that's fun, that's up to you and your preferences. But you can see that real silver and silver plate requires care, and it's best kept put away, and usually they're wrapped in cloths that don't mind the oxidation hitting them. So special cloths and cases and boxes that are lined with a fabric are how these were stored back in the day. Then let's talk about the food for this sewing party. So she didn't mind, I do want to say, she didn't mind having friends over to help her with a project that she needed to do for her own home. And it reminds me of a quilting bee. Women used to get together and help one another finish their quilting projects, didn't they? They would gather around and a quilt and have it stretched out on a frame and just visit and stitch. And that was a normal way to spend time in community, being busy at something that was needed, some work that was needed to be done and could be done in community. So that's something to think about, that it's okay to ask people over to help you with a project, make a party out of it. She had her tea cart decorated with nasturtiums, and I did run across some nasturtiums on a little hillside while I was on my vacation, and I took some pictures. I'll post a picture of nasturtiums in case you don't know what that flower looks like. What's interesting about nasturtiums is they're actually edible. It's one of the edible flowers, and they're so lovely, and they taste very peppery. So sometimes people add them to salads, but be aware that it tastes like pepper. So you can eat the flowers and the leaves on the nasturtiums, but people like to put the flowers in a salad just to add some color, and you'll see that they're orange and yellow color of nasturtiums. All right, so the treat that she had out was the sunbonnet baby salad, and that was using canned pears, halves of canned pears, and making them look like the face and neck of a baby, and the lettuce was up around the back like a bonnet, and she made the cloves. She used cloves for eyes and almonds for ears, and then a little bit of pimento, which is red, for the nose and mouth. And then she said she put salad dressing around the outside of the pear to represent hair, and arranged a bow of red pimento under the chin of the sunbonnet baby. So she thought that was cute. I don't know about that, but that was what she did. And to her, it was charming and added a fun and festive look. And then she served her nut bread and the lemon sherbet. She had icing that she put on the cake, which I think was the nut bread. And then, let's see, I think that's about all we have to talk about, but we will remember that her porch is a living porch. She uses it like an extended or separate or additional living room, and she has her wicker furniture out there. She has her plants in two ways. She has window boxes, and then she has flower baskets hanging also. So I wonder if you have any of those things around your place to beautify them. Have you decorated your porch in any way? I know that I have a little cactus out on my porch that it's called a peanut cactus, and two friends of mine gave it to me as a friendship gift. They each had one on their porch, and there's a little story and poem they sent with it that talks about how the one gave a little piece of that peanut cactus to her friend, and that now hers is overflowing, and so they both have beautiful cactuses on their porches, and now I have one too. So that was fun. And so that's what I have on my porch, and it has some other succulents in the pot with it, along with the wandering Jude plant, which is purple on its leaves. So it's a pretty planter out there. So think about beautifying your porch. Think about bringing some furniture out there where you can sit and visit and maybe even be productive. All right, thanks. Join me next time for chapters 19 and 20. And we're still in the month of July.